Yesterday, Brian, after announcing the metals industry sanctions against Iran, the president said that he looks forward to someday meeting the Iranian leaders in order to work out an agreement. And very importantly, taking steps to give Iran the future it deserves. Are there any preconditions with meeting with the Iranian leaders?
What we've said is we need to see a change in behavior. And you can then define that however you'd like in the context of negotiations. But we have said all along that words are not going to be enough. That what we need to see is a change in this regime's revolutionary behavior. For 40 years, they have been exporting their own sort of version of revolution and clerical rule throughout the Middle East, trying to stir up Shia populations against the established government in the country. So we certainly think the Iranian people would like to see more time and money spent on the Iranian people and less time and money spent building this Shia corridor of control that runs from Lebanon to Yemen.
Right. Of the 12 demands that the U.S. has of Iran to change its behavior, what would be good for them to start off with? And does the U.S. require Iran to act upon all 12 at one time before getting into negotiations?
The 12 requirements are really focused around what we're looking for in a new deal. So the current deal is limited to the nuclear program. We know that Iran's threats are not limited to the nuclear program. They have missile proliferation. They're trying to, they're testing for an intercontinental ballistic missile with these space launches that they keep doing, the funding of their proxies, the deployment of Quds Force soldiers around the Middle East. Any new agreement with this regime is not going to be limited to the nuclear piece. It's going to be broader than that. It is going to include the nuclear program, the missile program, and the regional aggression, and the arbitrary detention of American citizens. That is the right approach to this regime. The last administration focused just on the nuclear program. Whatever modest and temporary benefits that have been achieved in that category have come at the expense of every other category.
Right, but to get talks started, do they have to take only maybe one or two steps to show a goodwill?
I think Iran knows what it needs to do. I don't think there's any mystery. We have been completely clear all along for 2 years about what Iran needs to do differently if they want to reestablish diplomatic relations with the United States and to have our sanctions lifted, which we have talked about doing.
Right.
And so we are ready to do these. I did a video in front of the Iranian embassy on Massachusetts Avenue saying that we look forward to returning the keys to this embassy to the Iranian people. And that day can come. The Iranian regime, that day is not going to come for as long as the Iranian regime is running its expansionist foreign policy.
Again, regarding sanctions, yesterday's sanctions, apparently Iranian stock market has fluctuated quite a bit. How do you see the Iranian economy in the near future, given the sanctions that are being applied by the U.S.?
Iran is in a recession now, and that is going to get worse because that is the price that this regime is going to pay for behaving like an outlaw regime. It can't be without consequence. You can't run this violent and very expansionist foreign policy for 10 years and not expect any consequence. We are now putting in place unprecedented historical pressure on this regime so that there's a contest. And I think from 2007 all the way up until about 2016, the Quds Force and the Revolutionary Guards were largely given a free hand to operate in the Middle East, going into these countries, dissolving national identities, and then inspiring sectarian violence against the legitimate governments in these countries. So we have really put our foot down and we've said no more, and we're serious about it. This stuff has got to stop. Secretary Pompeo has said that the biggest threat to peace and security in the Middle East is Iran. That's post-ISIS, we can say that. It's Iran, and we're very determined to implement this foreign policy for peace and security.
Yesterday, again, also when the president announced the sanctions, he said that the agreement, the nuclear agreement, is beyond repair. Now, today, following Iran's announcement yesterday, the spokesman for the Iranian Atomic Energy Agency, has said that Iran is prepared to bring the nuclear deal with the world powers back on track. What is your reaction to that?
It's hard to know what to make of yesterday's statement by the regime that they would be no longer complying with some parts of the Iran nuclear deal, and they let the other members of the deal know that. Today they seem to have walked that back. What they announced yesterday was an intention, and they're essentially giving the European nations 60 days to generate more economic benefits or else. This is the very definition of extortion. It's nuclear blackmail. We're out of the deal, and so it doesn't affect us. What we're looking very closely at is if Iran takes any steps, any concrete steps that would bring them below a 1-year timeline to get a nuclear weapon. That's what we're looking at. And that will be our focus outside of the deal. Meanwhile, being outside of the Iran deal has given us a lot of leverage that we've put now in place to deter Iran's nuclear program, their missile program, and their regional aggression.
Now, the maximum pressure policy is for change in the regime's behavior. Now, if it doesn't come to the table, even with all of this pressure, and for whatever reason, the Iranian people are not able to exert the kind of pressure that's also necessary, is there a plan B?
No, we're having an impact. We've seen it. Hezbollah is having to beg for charity. In March, Iran's 2019 budget had a 28% cut in defense spending. Last year was a 10% cut in defense spending. During the Iran nuclear deal, it reached record highs. We are seeing Iranian-backed Shia fighters saying that the money from Iran is gone. We see Shia fighters not being able to receive the pay that they used to. That's a good thing. We are going by this economic pressure. We're denying Iran the ability to fund its proxies. It's very, very basic. In this case, foreign policy is basic math. If Iran doesn't have the money, it's going to be very hard for Hezbollah and their Shia militias in Syria and Yemen and Iraq and elsewhere to do their job. So we're very happy with this steady state of pressure that we hope to keep in place for as long as is necessary.